Welcome back, everyone, to the second webinar. Sasha Stone, welcome back.
Thank you, sir.
You wanted to bring up conversations specifically about the tribunals and justices that are going on?
Well, what I should have done was I should have first asked Rebecca her permission. Is it okay to speak about that today, Rebecca?
Oh, yes, why not? Can't keep a good thing down. Let's just talk about it.
Okay, well, what we're doing is International Tribunal for Natural Justice. We expect formal announcement within a couple of weeks, but the first bold brushstroke that we will be actioning later this year, which Rebecca Cope, our esteemed Director of Law, has written the presentment for, is the inaugural Citizens Grand Jury. Which I won't necessarily divulge where that's taking place unless you wish to, Rebecca, but please can you tell us a little bit about the Citizens Grand Jury, what it is and why it is?
Okay, well, let's start with the beginning here. When a thought is dropped in to an audience and it becomes an absolute bombshell. That was one of the most fascinating things that I watched in 2012. As a matter of fact, it was December 26, 2012, when this little tiny group of trustees, 3 people, dropped this bombshell that they had foreclosed on the corporations posing as governments. They not only foreclosed on the corporations posing as governments, they tied the slavery contracts to the people to the point of $10 billion per each person on the face of the earth that had been enclosed within these slavery contracts. I just happened to be listening to one of the radio shows when about 300 people heard that. It was the first time that that announcement had been made. Within 3 weeks of that announcement, 300 people turned into 200,000 almost overnight. As the word spread and people began to capture the idea of what it would feel like not to be enclosed in the world that these corporations had created, where they took all of the wealth, the spiritual and the commercial energy of the people, and they used it for their own good. What would a world look like if we the people were in charge again? And you have to understand, people in the United States believe with all of their hearts in government of, by, and for the people. But that's not what we have. But most of them still are not quite aware of just exactly where it has become. So the whole purpose of this project is to bring that awareness by teaching the story of how we, the little people of America, have begun to figure this out ourselves. So we're starting this with a documentary, and I'm working with Roger Bowman with Media, Rising Life Media, who is one of the most incredible people as far as capturing these ideas and working with it. And then Ahmet, who is working with National Geographic. And if any of you are familiar with the work of Godfrey Reggio, are you familiar with Godfrey's work? How he takes an image and he makes you absolutely understand what's going on. So our first step is to help the American people grasp that, number one, these corporations posing as governments really did take over the government of the United States. And exactly how that happened, we have one incredible key witness who will be a part of our Citizens Grand Jury, who almost single-handedly can tell you chapter and verse, because he spent the last decade of his life getting all of these pieces into the place where he can explain it so easily that anybody can understand it. So we're going to be putting this together in the form of this documentary. And Roger and Amit and Paulo, who is another incredible our communications director who's come on board, they're going to be putting this together in a format that the American people are going to get to understand what happened, how these corporations took over, and how they literally put this slavery contract on the heads of the people. We can take it right down to the Social Security Act of 1935, and we can show you in the legislative record where that amount is funded based on that birth certificate contract. So we've gotten the evidence down to that level of understanding. And so we're going to call a citizens grand jury, and we're going to use an e-democracy format so that we can return the idea of government of, by, and for the people, to the people. We're not talking about one judge sitting up there in his black robes who can decide whether somebody's going to be thrown out of their home. To heck with that stuff. That's what's going on in America every day right now. One judge who gets to sign off as the prosecutor and the judge and whoever happens to be your attorney. They have to sign this in order for them to be able to get paid, to have these contracts that turn into prison bonds, that turn into they're stealing your identity in order to fund this. Well, we have all the goods on it. So we're going to be bringing all of this information in as evidence before the people in a way that will have a consequences from a legal standpoint. And then we're setting up the International Tribunal of Natural Justice so that we will have an august body who will be able to hear this evidence, and if these corporations are indicted, then we the people will take back our power enough to be able to begin to tell these corporations that we know beyond the shadow of a doubt that they have been foreclosed, and we are here to take back our world. So, you know, that's just sort of a rough idea. I mean, you know, that's the almost what you would call the idealist vision. As we're bringing it down on paper and getting these ideas together, this is one of those things that's been so much fun to work on, because it's truly one of those things whose time has come, because we had no more gotten the idea out than all of the pieces of the puzzle fit together so that we're able to put this documentary together. In like a week's time, we have the vision and the people in place to be able to do it. And so that's what we're doing with the Citizens Grand Jury. We have 3 things that we'll be doing. We'll be calling the people to sign the Declaration of Individual Sovereignty that's on the New Earth Nation website, because the first step of becoming a sovereign is to declare your status. Then, of course, the second part is to get the education. And we have all of those pieces that are just coming together so that we'll be able to tell the people what the purpose of the grand jury is, you know, what the historical significance is, and why we, the people, have the right to do that. Now, I'm very aware of those movements where it's been started in the United States. There have been several things that have been done to try to bring this out. But this is different, because we're not depending on those guys in black robes. We're taking this directly to the people. So it's really an exciting project. It's just literally in its first month of getting off the ground. But there's a lot of things that will be going on as we get started to do the educational sequence and the participation, the call to participation. We're working with the gal who helped set up the e-democracy format in the country of Iceland. And if you remember the story of Iceland, those people kicked the bankers out of their country.
Yeah.
Well, that's our goal.
And a little something else people don't know is they went back to equity.
Yes.
Big thing. I have a question from the chat. Is the new version of the tribunals going to work with any other citizens courts that may be functioning out there?
Yes. It's our goal as we bring these resources together, because there are so many people in the United States working on this in so many ways. So part of our goal as we're putting this project together is to bring those people who are already working on their little pieces, who have some of the templates, who have the oh, the hand-holding that's going on with these forums and the resources all together, from the Anti-Foreclosure Network, Harold Beale and the work that he's doing. There are just so many all over that I could talk about. Rod Class and his AIB Radio, you know, there's just so many. So we want to bring all of these people into one umbrella as much as they're willing to do, to be able to pull all of these into one coherent focus. That's what our goal is. It's, you know, it's always, you know, it's a big idea, but whether everybody can pull into it, we're going to do everything we can to bring it down to the level where the people can understand it and get on board. That's just absolutely the focus.
Laura, you wanted to say something to that?
Oh, yes, bravo, Rebecca. And of course, it's against natural law to have borders. They don't exist.
Yes.
That's another part. It's one Earth nation.
Yes.
So, whew. And it's about time that we live the image we can see from far away, not a single border.
See, part of the problem is that, for instance, as Rebecca and I well know, because we're following it closely, there is a tribunal which has been underway in Brussels for some time now, the International Tribunal for the Crimes Against Church and State, headed up by the very brave Reverend Kevin Annett. And, you know, they've been bringing forth testimonies and eyewitnesses who witnessed satanic ritualism, child sacrifice taking place within the Roman Catholic Church and the Vatican and what have you. The most extraordinary stuff has been brought to light through this tribunal. And yet, it's something which is the preserve of those of us who choose to look for what's happening out there. Because obviously mainstream media, being the eyes and the ears of the cabal interests, is locked down, wholly owned and contained and controlled. So part of the process which we're looking to engage with within the New Earth notion of law and jurisprudence is bringing to heel commissioning editors and publishers of newspapers, director generals of international television networks, who are themselves ensuring that truth and justice do not prevail in this world. I personally am of the mind that we should not even bother with diplomats and governments and ministries and militia and police and go for the jugular of the international syndicated media mafia, because they are the eyes and ears. And without them and a little bit of truth prevailing, we are all of us flying blind in this world. I'm doubting if we'll let that prevail.
Maybe that should be a specific subheading in the court where specifically for propaganda crimes.
Well, it is, and this is what we're looking to do, is to really exact some kind of judiciousness in respect of those editors and those publishers and those deviants who know full well what's going on in the cloistered basements of the churches and the power establishment. And yet they serve those masters quite knowingly, quite consciously. Then this, of course, is part and parcel of the old arcane lineages, Masonic traditions which have gone rogue, Templar traditions which have gone rogue, occultic traditions which have by and large always been rogue. But that has to stop. And I think that most people expect that a tribunal or a citizen's grand jury is going to be focusing on the president or the commander-in-chief. No, it's going to go for people who don't have any public profile, don't have any celebrity status in the power establishment, but they are the functionaries. And in point of fact, if we focus on those kinds of intercessionaries, they are likely to squeal like a proverbial piggy.
Yes, and the other group that we really want to focus on is those agents who are willingly doing what, they're just sort of doing their job, but they're the ones who are causing the most harm to the people. And as we begin to focus on them and find a way to be able to hold these people accountable, it's the same thing that we're dealing with those who are doing the propaganda with the media. It's a twofold process, because we're focusing on the local level and we're focusing on the biggest picture that we can get to bring these people to awareness that, hey, we know what's going on and we're not willing to put up with it any longer. So it's anything along those lines that we're looking to do. As we're doing the educational focus, we have so many people whose stories are exactly that, as they're standing up to these courts. And I mean, oh, it's just been it's been amazing to me to be a part of this journey over the last 5 years, especially as this movement has just grown unstoppable in the United States. And so we want to make sure that we're making all other people aware, because you do not have it on the media. You know, you never see any of these stories on the media. So for us to be able to gather these stories and help getting those out on a regular basis so that more and more people have the courage to stand. Because you know what? We have this image, thank God for the Wall Street group that put the image of the 99% and the 1% out. It's the 99% who have to act if we are going to hold this 1% responsible. So we're just part of the process of calling everybody to get aware of what's going on and to stand in their own power in however way they can. So that's a large part of it. It's calling out the people to action, but not doing it in a, it's a thought revolution. We don't have to have our guns and everything blazing. It's a thought revolution. We're working for the hearts and minds of the people.
And a question I have, Andrew, if I can drop something in there.
Sure.
Yeah, just like also we talk about the 99% or the 1%, but aren't we ultimately, when we're saying holding others to account, I'm sure you'll share something on this, but it's not like we're not creating something to then create. We're holding people account and then going into conflict. Because then we're just going into conflict again if we're just holding other people to account and saying they're the 1% that's done things wrong and they've got to rectify stuff and we've got to pull them out, etc., right? Because if we go into the systems that we're saying are wrong, whatever, right, wrong, good or bad, aren't we just falling into that same energy of conflict, that this is all wrong, it shouldn't be like that? Aren't we creating something new to make the old system obsolete by just pulling ourselves out of that from the perspective of, as opposed to holding people to account?
Yes, but part of it has to come, the awareness has to come in order for people to be willing and able to step out. So all of these things, the OPPT movement, the Wall Street, the 99%ers, all of these people have done such a wonderful job of help bring awareness to the problem. It's like, I think that this is a big part of what's still missing in America. I can remember being a part of watching TV during the Vietnam era, for instance, because my cousin was killed in Vietnam. So we were all very, very, very aware of what was going on. During that whole era, we were seeing the things that were going on. The civil rights movement was fought in our living rooms. We could see it in living color. We no longer have that opportunity in America. So you have to realize that the American people are clueless about so much of what's going on that our first job is going to be bringing more of them into an understanding of how their country was taken over before they're willing to stand up and get themselves out of it. So it's a pretty big challenge for us to bring some of this to the attention of more people.
Do the citizenry courts address disclosure also?
Oh, why not? I mean, that's one of the key things that has been withheld from the people. Look what Hope has done with this QEG. And gosh, where is Hope? I thought she was going to be with us. And part of the biggest problem with their program is that she dared get something out there and get it to the people, and then has had to deal with a lot of the blowback, so to speak. Because this is a really big deal, just to get something like this out into the consciousness in open source so that she is willing to stand up and say, we're going to do this. and do it anyway. Until she was willing to do that in an open source format, how was it going to happen? You know, how could we possibly do a project like this and get caught up in the old system in the courts and everything else like that and expect to have a different result? So we have to do things a different way. And disclosure is one of those things that has kept us from having all of this beautiful technology. So anything that is keeping us from moving forward as a species is up for bringing the evidence and getting this before the people. We'll start with America, but it will quickly move to, well, it's an international tribunal, because it is the world that is at stake here. And it's the people of the world that basically are the ones, we're not victims anymore here. We've got to take our stand, and that's what we're doing.
That's right. Well, I'd like to present the movie that I just finished, which is Where I Met Sasha.
Okay.
And where I met, very similar to your project, it sounds like, where we're grabbing the luminaries of our time to help explain to humanity how we can move forward best. It's not about moaning about the problems, it's about presenting the problems and really stepping into the solutions. And so I went to the Global Breakthrough Energy Movement Conference in Boulder, Colorado, and interviewed a lot of people there. So my movie was just like basically a gift on a platter. Mm-hmm. Sasha was there, Foster Gamble, Dr. David Martin, Michael Tellinger, and everybody took time and really spoke from their hearts. So this movie is called The Shift Has Hit the Fan. It's so dang intense, and because I'm just a bulldog with my work, I just got it on PBS in Colorado, and because I'm so passionate about what I'm seeing that I don't like, I'm just as passionate as Sasha, but I'm really trying to sit on my tongue, because once I start going, like you, I barely stop. I mean, it is infuriating to sit here and have chemtrails dumped on us on a really bad day. We're just like, really? How can they have control this much of the sky? I mean, it's stunning. And then you turn on the faucet, and when you smell that chlorine, it's like, how can they dump garbage in the water systems? How can they have that much control? So the punchline is, last night I watched Thrive again. I hadn't seen it since it first came out, and I'm watching it from start to finish, and I didn't remember very much of it. I remembered the beautiful Taurus, but there's so much story, and because he and Kimberly are so darn sweet, you forget how heavy they were from start to finish in this movie. I was stunned, blown away. Have you guys watched it in the last year?
I actually just watched Thrive last month.
Wasn't it shocking? Didn't you see it and go, oh my God, I don't remember half this? Mm-hmm. Because look at us, raising our awareness and our evolution. All of a sudden, as we look, we see so much more. He just touched on everything that we are discussing here, everything we're not saying. So it's not like the stuff's not out there. I've made 7 movies now. Mm-hmm. And 4 of them are hidden because I picked the wrong distributors, who are not distributors, they're suppressors, but they pretended to be distributors. I've been dealing with it like I can't believe. I just burned my entire website. The level of hacking I've been dealing with is insurmountable. I had to burn and destroy every link in and out of my website 2 weeks ago, and what we found was what the hacker had done was created a shadow site, another pattygreer.com, and was redirecting everything away from me.
Yeah, but Patty, it's unsurprising. I mean, 20 years ago, the idea of explicitly speaking about UFOs and crop circles and engaging with our galactic family and so on was so hyperbolic and such a ridiculous notion before. Nowadays, pretty much everyone on the street is equal to the conversation. I would suggest that 99% of people have no issue with it and would actually love to engage in that beautiful galactic story. So the suppression of folks like you who make it your life's purpose to expose and disclose this stuff, it's unsurprising that they've got small, catchments of IT geniuses who are paid to hack away into your system and debilitate you. That's just not surprising to me at all. But I'll tell you, this whole suppression game is something which, again, is connected to our own psychology and our own capacity to engage with bigger stories at the individual level. Because the more we can, the more it seems that our the superconscious mind in the galaxy is engaging with us in diametric proportion to our individual and collective capacity to receive those codes and those narratives and engage with them. So it's really a question of us looking up and engaging with the story for the story to prevail. It's no secret now that over the last few years, there have been a number of engagements, principally in Mexico, where literally thousands of craft were in the sky, broad daylight. Okay, kids didn't go to school, traffic came to a standstill. Hundreds of thousands of people looked up and saw it happening. And this is well documented on YouTube, and yet you don't exactly see that stuff being syndicated onto BBC or CNN. So again, the eyes and the ears that control the principal storylines, the programming, are still blind and mute. But people themselves are principally, by and large, equal to the conversation and open to it. That's my experience. Andrew, you know a great deal more than that, because as a galactic historian, you do this stuff 7 days a week.
7 days a week, 24/7, 365 on a multidimensional level. But then again, that's everyone's legacy to be like that. Absolutely everyone's. How we each come to that, whether it's through sovereignty, through spirituality, through law, through oil, whatever, it all comes down to belief systems, belief systems, belief systems.
Yes.
We have these belief systems that are old and archaic and still being taught and retaught, taught and retaught. You look at a hospital. A doctor goes and does slave labor at a college, and then goes and does their work at the hospital in slave labor, and then they turn around and make the nurses their slaves. Okay, you're born into a place that's sterile. There's no love in it. Your umbilical cord your fetal sac is torn off. You're harvested your stem cells of there. You're stuck in an incubator. You're not put on your mother's heart right away. That is not birthing. That is not healing.
But Andrew, the perfect way to suppress life. You see, they got us at the very beginning. It's a
That was
perfect
the goal.
to be a good consumer later on in life when you have bonded with the acrylic of your bassinet and the little coverlet. So that place might be the last bastion. People still think it's normal to be born in a hospital. There's a little Dennis the Menace child saying, "Mommy, was I sick when I was born?" "No, my love, why? Why was I born in a hospital?" So we consider it normal when a pregnant woman goes to see a doctor. Do you go to see a doctor when you're digesting, breathing? I mean, this is absurd, but that is so ingrained in our culture, South and North. So you talk about suppression, Sasha. We suppress feelings, we suppress senses, we suppress all of that so we can comply later on. But go on, Andrew. Sorry to interrupt you.
It's okay. So on a galactic scale, there are many, many off-world species who are very close to their own layers of extinction because their DNA has run out. They don't have sex organs anymore. They're not connected to a tree of life, and they could be 10,000, 12,000, or 50,000 years old and never have had a child. And that is another legacy we take back to the stars, is teaching them how to have children and not to be incubated children. To not to have their stem cells harvested or to become into a clone at 30 years old with no childhood and no concept of love other than the programs that come in your DNA skin suit. You know, we're going to understand why there is a DNA trade amongst scientists and political organizations here. Why? Because they're making a bank of DNA in which they've been trading off-world for thousands of years. That is another legacy we are going to inherit. There are off-world banks that we all know about through the STS projects. Well, those off-world banks have been doing what? Accepting technology, accepting minerals, accepting infinite resources for a shadow government that has taken us from your first footprint on that piece of paper from a live birth certificate. And we can say no to this fiction, no to this facade, no to the stage actors and actresses and stage deities and demigods, because those are a part of this too. Because you had a point where disclosure represented alien, and alien represented God, and God represented all these intertwining things of what an ancient alien imposing as a God, and then we come back into this, that our judges are what? At the Supreme Court level here in the United States, they are God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we buy it.
Doctor,
Yeah.
God. None of them are gods. We are all gods.
Yeah.
Andrew, quick question there. What you said 30-year-old clones. What do you mean?
Oh yeah, they come out of the test tube 30 years old. A lot of off-world species, they don't have any childhood whatsoever.
Oh wow.
What this is happening? This is
All the time, yeah. And if Patty'd like to speak on some of those concepts out there when it comes to genetic engineering and clone engineering, which are thousands of species that have existed that way for millions of years without natural birth in any way, shape, or form. And our society is reflecting that because we have been taking their technology and applying it to our social consciousness. And our social consciousness has regurgitated corporate buildings, has regurgitated hospitals, United Nations, military-industrial complexes, confused spirituality, fake spirituality, true spirituality, and all that other stuff that's a part of making disclosure not real, which is the disinformation industry.
Yeah, it is an industry. I think there's an awful lot of people that we like to listen to that are still up on the stage constantly that we think are our friends but have been paid off to mislead us.
Over a whole generation, 30-plus years, some of them.
Oh, it's so sad because a lot of them are the ones getting hired over and over for the old boys club. And, you know, I'm kind of the breakthrough girl because I don't give in easily. And when my movies were stuck in the freezer for 3 years, I just went, okay, fine, I'll go out and talk about it. Because, you know, when you're chosen to work with these wonderful beings, you've got an opportunity to pretty much lose the respect of most of your community and half your friends. So, you know, if you're going to dance, you better dance big and make a decision to go for it because the ET discussion is still not socially acceptable. I just find it absolutely fascinating that how real this is. And I'm going back to the crop circles, and I'm not talking about when or with who, or I haven't talked to any social media about my upcoming plans, which it's really unfortunate because I'd love to share it with the world how exciting things are. Even in Pattyland.
Oh, so ETs and crop circles may not be socially acceptable, Patty, but in real terms, society is not socially acceptable. Put that in your pipe and smoke.
I'll get out of the pipe.
Right. So, yeah, but you know, we're not real interested in what's socially acceptable anymore because we're all rebels in this group, right?
Yeah. Every one of us.
That's right. Proud of it.
We've all variously transcended those huge patterns and memes, and software programs, and that includes the religious programming. There is religion and religious programming are two different things altogether, and cultural programming. What a ghastly construct. Familial programming, even more gruesome in many respects. Societal programming. All of these programs are toxic to true sovereignty and to true consciousness. So to engage with the atom's seed of consciousness and sovereignty, which is the same thing, we are required to transcend all of those programs.
This has been one of my favorite things to share with audiences because we can all do this. And it's an exercise in seeing a parallel universe, which I'm pretty sure is plasma. And they're everywhere now. And all we need to do is stop being busy and look up in the sky and relax into a stare, and we can all see these things. And so the first clue is, because all of you, I'm sure, are going to say, oh, yeah, I've seen them all the time, are those little glints in the sky. You know, like a little glitter that flints around and flicks everywhere. If you'll all go outside after our talk or tomorrow and just remember to do this, you'll be stunned at what you can see today. But you'll start with the glints, and everybody says, oh, yeah, you know, the doctor said it was just in my eyelids or in my eyeballs. Okay, fine. The doctor also stuck a vaccine in your arm, so forget about what they said. Look at these glints and focus on the fact that they're everywhere. They keep moving, and they move with energy, and they're all going in different directions, so they have some kind of consciousness and energy, so they are indeed living whatever they are. And the more you watch them, you'll see that they all leave a trail behind. So there is light, and it is energized, because you can see it is a trail when these things move. And the more you relax your eyes and watch these glints and their trails, you'll start seeing these plasma things that are just everywhere. And it's almost like staring at a 3D card where you relax your eyes enough that all of a sudden it pops from the paper and then you can see, right? You've seen those things? Yeah. But you have to relax your eyes enough, and when you start seeing these things round that are everywhere, not just the glints, but all these plasma things, many of them are long like a snake, you're going to drop your jaw and say, oh my God, and you're going to start watching them and realize that they are absolutely everywhere in the sky. And the first time I saw them was after I was taken in a crop circle and brought back, and I'm laying on my back looking at the sky, so it was easy to see them. And I thought it was just crop circles, but I've seen them everywhere I've gone. Everywhere. They're in the sky all around us, no matter how big
I look forward to seeing them with you, Patty, in a matter of, I think, about 10 or 12 days. I'll be joining you in a crop circle somewhere in the countryside in Britain, and hope to be able to tell the tale.
Indeed, but you can see it outside your apartment in London. You can just walk outside, look at your eyes.
I have done on a number of occasions. I'm very attuned to this stuff. It doesn't spook me out in the least.
Well, it's about how we speak to the masses. This is what I'm talking about. How can we, as the pioneers here, get the masses to look up and realize that with their own eyes they can see these things? And, I mean, you take 20 people out that are virgins to it, and you're going to get 16 that go, oh, my God, I see it.
Yes.
Such a simple way for them to touch the fact that there's another parallel universe that they can see right here, right now. It's the coolest
Andrew, you're still with us.
Yeah, it starts with the children. That's where it starts. It's the children that will share that experience to go viral. The children can still see. The adults have their belief systems that are ingrained into them, and that's why 4 out of those 20 don't see it, or 10 out of the 20 don't see it. I've been in many environments, right? I've seen multiple vessels in the air, 30, 40 lights at a time chasing each other, and there's just 3 or 4 people that just can't see it.
Yeah, but 16 did.
16 did,
That's great in that environment.
Yes.
But there are environments, let's say in Moscow, over the Pussy Riot revolts that were going on. There were UFOs all over. Thousands didn't see it. That's the key. And were they not looking up? No, they were in the social consciousness and in that psychic environment of those different things of the belief system. Exactly. So disclosure is, again, confronting belief systems to allow that parallel reality to be able to quantum entangle with us. Because essentially, that's what this layer of communication with those are. It's quantumly entangling with their photonic light bodies, and we, our third eye, is constantly putting photonic light in and out. We just don't perceive it until we start using that part of our brain as like a psychic muscle.
And Andrew, it was well documented that with the early Portuguese and Dutch and Spanish, the chaps who went out on their galleons to discover the New World, on countless occasions there were those accounts of those ships pulling into the harbor of some Polynesian island, and they would first moor, they would first stay in the harbor to scout the land through telescopes for a matter of days or weeks, and circumnavigate, do the cartography, and there was a well-documented phenomena that occurred, which is that on a number of occasions the indigenous people on those islands who were there on the beaches, on the cliffs, were apparently unable to see the ships in the harbor, even though they were a matter of 200 or 300 meters away. They couldn't see them because they were incomprehensible. They didn't exist in the conceptual framework of these indigenous people. So apparently, it used to take a little time, a matter of days or weeks, and then some of the elders or the shaman or the medicine men around the fires would begin to look out to the water and do this, and then slowly they would call others and point, and the next thing you know, others could see it when it was pointed out. And this apparently is a well-documented phenomenon that occurred back in the day.
It's so well documented, is why I've included in many of my teachings, because our world was many different local realities, tens of thousands, and each one was individually conquered in the method in which you just said. Because each person, if you aren't aware of a global society and you are in a generation lineage on the same island over and over and again with no outside knowledge or wisdom, it doesn't exist in your reality. It literally doesn't until there's some energetic connection, some quantum entanglement that says, caveman sees something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Another caveman? How does the caveman know it's a caveman?
Ask him. If any of you have seen the famous film Owl, A.O., about the Neanderthal. Do you remember that great film?
I'll have to look it up.
You've got to check. It was an A.O. He had the lead role. He used to be an actor, Simon. So he's the only one amongst us who can actually speak. How do Neanderthals speak?
So what would one brand new caveman say to another caveman?
What's that?
I don't know if I want to talk about the Neanderthals necessarily, but I do want to say that this happens even just day to day. You know, I know that I was at the airport recently, and I was turning up with this person that was coming out of the airport because they didn't know I was there. They came out, they looked directly at me and didn't see me because I was there as a surprise. Yeah, and they didn't think I was coming, and they literally looked directly at me, walked past me, then I walked around, followed them and said, hey, you know, surprised them. And it's like, this happens all the time. So this idea that we just need to, like you said, share the awareness is actually, you know, it's all happening in front of us when we actually can just
turn on the mirror neurons.
The mirror neurons again, them mirror neurons.
Laura, sorry for interrupting you there.
No, it's exactly the biology of perception that book of Bruce Lipton describes it. The way we perceive things is the way we are, and the way we are is the way we perceive. It's a complete loop, like a sign of infinity. So we can give much better brains and perceptions to the newborns. We the women, not we the people, but we the women have been marring planet Earth with individuals with a lesser brain, just neurophysiologically. I mean, not even taking into consideration the spiritual realities or the mental, the emotional realities. The neurophysiology has been so poor that we have perfect brains to be selfish, to not to perceive the other, to not see what's going on, to not even want to see those realities between those little parts that you were describing so well, realities, parallel ones. Children are not all born in that enchanted way from an amniotic fluid of sacredness. Some are born out of hell, and it's the majority of people on earth, because of anguish, because of just everything, just the pesticides and fertilizers. They're just plastic, but in the womb they mimic estrogen, and they occupy the receptors for estrogen. I mean, this is amazing. We bring havoc at the level of neurophysiology, or the endocrine dimension of a little one is so important. So we are born completely handicapped to be able to perceive peace and communion. Then we spend a lifetime running after gurus. How can I find serenity and peace? That was, as you say, Sasha, our birthright. So it's up to these women around the world to know their power. It's not a power that they should feel. It's a power nature has given them, because they are the makers of the brains and the rest of the body, of course. But let's talk about the brain. And the biology of their perception, these new ones, depends on how they were carried, with anguish, with fear, or with love and surrender. With joy, perhaps?
With joy comes what? happiness. With happiness comes creation. With creation comes inspiration. And with inspiration comes the ability to dream again. As a species, we work 40 hours a week. That's the slave society mentality coming out. We sleep 8 hours a night. There's a natural sleep patterns that we're all going to get back to. I really think once a lot of the propaganda is turned down, some of the etheric broadcasting technologies and some of the other stuff that's out there that's just unpleasant to talk about, when that gets turned off, human beings will be like taking fog out of their brain. And they'll once again fall back to their natural sacred birthright, which is to be in communion and union with your family, your friends, and your land. And ultimately your ancestors, because you're standing on their shoulders right now. Because without them, you wouldn't exist.
That's a fact. And Rebecca, just to speak about the harmonic convergence, a few years ago, dear Jose Arguelles, who you may remember, was the man who effectively was the one who triggered the harmonic convergence. Some decades after he had worked out the long count Solcan of the Mayan calendar system, and he earmarked 2012 as being that tremendous fulcrum, that Rubicon, that crossover point. And he was then the one who effectively triggered the harmonic convergence. And he came and stayed with me for a month at my home in Bali, not long before he died. And I asked Jose what happened on that day, because it was well documented and well understood that all around the world, people in Santa Fe, people in Mozambique, people in the Caribbean, people in the Southeast Asian islands, communities, indigenous communities, stood up on that day. There was some tremendous Gaia-spheric, noospheric phenomena that occurred on that day, and people appeared to stand up and salute the skies. And I asked him what actually was transpiring on that day in your words. And he said it's very simple. He said it was encoded in the heart of man, that at that day, that time, we were to stand up and we were to salute the stars and the skies. But that salutation was letting the gods of old know, the angry, jealous gods of old know that we have come of age and that we are now ready to graduate into our sovereignty, our true spiritual dimension as living men and living women. And I think that that's a magnificent idea for us to hold on to.
Yes, and there have been so many, like Pierre Taylor, Dujardin, all of these people who really grasp that and help us bring this into consciousness. And those of us who gathered on that harmonic convergence, we had been working with people like Barbara Marx Hubbard. I really celebrate her because she's been one of the forerunners who's helped bring this consciousness of the new earth into birth in such a beautiful way. She's really just helped so many people wake up to that understanding. And we all felt it. We knew that we were a part of something that was magnificent, that called us to greater purpose. And so, we sort of were part of that first wave almost that helped set that tone. And it's called all of us and keeps calling us until we succeed with whatever it is that's going to bring about the birth of the human consciousness. It's just happening around us. I really believe that.
Disclosure is imminent.
Yes. And we're it, you guys.
All right, we've got a break coming up in 4 minutes, and I'd like to ask this of each person, because everyone's going to have a different view. What is disclosure? What is it? What does it really mean?
Disclosure is exposure. I think that's the word. It's exposure of all that is true, that no longer needs to be hidden. I think that the greatest secret never told about why they're hiding UFOs from the world is the work that we are doing here to bring free energy technologies. The crop circles have shown propulsion of spaceships. I found 80 like that quickly. And every time I looked at a different one, I could see it spin, and it was a prop. It was a propulsion formula right there in a crop circle. And there's so many of them, and they're all about propulsion. And then there was actually a crop circle that looked just like the serial effect generator. And, you know, this whole cover-up is because the oil people own everything. They're all the one and the same, the money problem here, and you know, as soon as free energy comes through, we clean up this planet like that because we're not polluting any longer. Their agenda's done. So this is the last grip that they have on greed and corruption, and they know that as soon as the world realizes that these crop circle messages are real, that ETs have been existing on the planet, working with a ton of us for decades, the game's over. The hands are down. We win.
I would suggest that disclosure, from my perspective, is in its truest, sharpest form, is not an explicit or temporal event or happening. It's an internal and implicit event. The true disclosure, to my mind, is where I turn to face self, and where arguably I engage with self for the very first time in my mortal expression, and where I take full accountability for the here and now, for all lineage, for all projections, for all fears, all sorrows, all desires. And in fact, I surrender all of them in that moment, that perfect moment of now, and I engage in crowning myself sovereign. And I take the throne of selfhood, and I engage with self for the very first time in this mortal realm. That, to me, is the disclosure that I've been discovering. I am very much less concerned with governments and explicit manifestations of disclosure, because increasingly I have learned that that will become congruent with my own capacity to engage with the innerscape.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think for me it's just self-trust. Nice and simple. The ability to transparently share exactly what's going on within you, which is pretty much a bit simpler way of sharing what Sasha said.
Yes. Yes, and for me, it's really the second coming is within us, that we are Christ, that there is absolutely no separation between us and Creator Source, and that there is, you know, there is no, as Sasha was saying to start with, there is no reason for inner intercessory. We're it. And we're the ones we've been waiting for. We all say that. It's almost a trite cliche. But that second coming is the realization within our hearts that we are one with Christ, and we're it. I mean, we understand that at a cellular level, at a multidimensional level.
Laura.
I would like to disclose my ideas on disclosure after the break.
All right, take us to the break, and we'll disclose our discernments on disclosure.
Each different bubble of reality is true.
A galactic historian is a person that looks at all the lines of dramatic karma.
Nudge, nudge, it's the Holy Grail.
Improvise.
Mysterious. It's counter psychic intelligence.
Why is DNA farming of this star cluster so important?
Because we do manifest our reality. We do create our reality.
Hello, let's create, let's co-create, and let's change this world with love. No matter if you're from Alpha Centauri or Earth, we all began with the same birthing process. We live in a limited point of view. Living the mystical life daily is about striving for the unlimited point of view. Each day, each human being gets an infinite amount of choices. Living the mystical life daily is about facing obstacles and challenges. The level of awareness that you are working at means you have a responsibility to be equal with it. How does one truly let go of expectation? You can make the moment that you wake up to the moment you go to sleep sacred. The keys to success: choice, 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 and choice.